His supporters try to present him as like the peace president, right? I don't think he's that. I think he's perfectly fine with killing people, also in some cases illegally just killing people. But he does seem to have an aversion to actually going to war. Like he seems perfectly fine with force, but he doesn't want casualties. And I'm not sure it's purely about domestic politics. I think there's something where he might also have like a fixed belief, right?
I think that's right. I think he does not want to be the president who sent large numbers of troops anywhere. He likes to use bombing and special forces, he's not alone in that. I mean, I think there's been a lot of, Obama used drones to an incredible extent, and they were very new at the time. That was what all my students wanted to talk about during the Obama administration was drones and the killings, the drone strikes. And Obama killed a lot of people with drones. And there was very little oversight, very little congressional attention on it, and it's become just become an accepted part of our toolkit, I think, the U.S. toolkit at least. I think Trump is happy to use these sort of what he perceives to be as these kind of surgical uses of military force, right? And he doesn't really want to deal with the aftermath, doesn't really care about the aftermath, as long as the deal is he perceives it to be beneficial to the U.S. or himself. So I agree. I don't see him ordering. I have a really hard time seeing him ordering an invasion, a true military, like tanks rolling or amphibious landing, that kind of thing. He's happy to attack, but he's not really willing to go to war, I think. I should say that does not make him a peace president, as you say. He does a lot of damage with these, and it undermines trust in addition to the human cost. It undermines trust in the U.S. It can create incredible problems for the country that he's attacking. It's certainly not peaceful. It's also not costless. It's just a different form of using military force.
One aspect that I think doesn't get enough attention, but is really interesting, is sort of the maneuvering below the surface, right? So obviously Trump makes the ultimate decisions, but there's a lot of sort of different advisors, different camps below him that try to influence him one way or another. Can you give us some insight into these types of camps and kind of their disagreements and what they might be looking for?
Well, lots of people have, I think, rightly said that there are many Trump administrations. There's always many different camps in administrations, but there's not. What seems different about this is, first of all, everyone is selected for their unquestioning loyalty. So if Trump doesn't want to do something, I don't know that he feels even beholden to anybody at this point, right? The normal politics or insider's game that I talk about in my book is just not really doesn't really seem to matter for foreign policy decisions. That said, you do have competing visions. Marco Rubio seems to have convinced him to, move away from the deals that he was trying to make with Venezuela and Maduro to this operation to take out Maduro, and maybe even shifting over to Cuba. Again, through blockade of oil, cannot easily imagine an invasion of the island, especially since he's shipped all these military assets to the Middle East to try to do the same to Iran. And I think in that case, it was a sort of a bargain or interest pointing in the same direction with Stephen Miller, who is his domestic security advisor, deputy chief of staff, highly influential, who really wanted to focus on the narco-terrorism piece of it and get the U.S. kind of on this weird quasi-war footing and treat Venezuela as part of the immigration and drug problem, because that's a way of, again, increasing presidential power even further. I think there have been other times when there have been disagreements, and then it just comes down to which side, what Trump wants to do. It's a lot harder to predict than in a typical administrations, or even in the first Trump administration, where you could see pressure on him, and then he would, you would have constraint on his sort of most extreme impulses. And I think the best example of this, I try to think hard about, okay, Trump is not responsible for everything. And in other words, he is responsible in the sense that he's the president, but he's not, you cannot ascribe every policy development to him alone. Let's put it that way. I can easily imagine that if Rubio had won the 2016 primary, the Republican primary, and gotten elected president, I can easily imagine an outcome where you get the same operation in Venezuela, right? That's not actually that hard to imagine. My first book was about how leaders shape military intervention, right? And so I try to keep myself honest. I don't think it's always the leader that's decisive, right? The one that I think is the most pure expression of Trump is Greenland, right? That I cannot imagine any rational world where, a realistic contender for either the Republican nomination in 2016 or 2024, Rubio, Nikki Haley, any of them would have threatened, the Europeans with military force. And yes, he did threaten with military force, impose tariffs, and just said, we have to have Greenland. It makes no sense on a strategic level. He can get anything he wants from the Danes and from Greenland at far lower cost. I mean, to annex Greenland would be extremely costly compared to the situation we have today. Plus all the loss of trust and everything else. It's hard to imagine anyone else doing that. And I think that is an expression of Trumpism in a way, or whatever. I don't like putting it in the sort of ism doctrine category because I don't think it's that coherent. But I think he wanted Greenland. He wants to expand the U.S. He wants to extract resources. He doesn't care. It does go back to he doesn't really like allies or care much about them. He's happy to take a confrontational stance with them just as he would with enemies. So Greenland is, to me, the most clear expression of how Trump really has affected things in a way that another Republican president would not have.